Well, good evening. And I have the pleasure of talking to a friend that I met on Twitter, and we've been corresponding in the rest. And she mentioned that she wrote some books, and I thought, oh my gosh, a practicing classroom teacher that's written material, decodable books. This has got to be something my readers are going to be very interested in. So, her name is Julia Armstrong. And at this point, I'm going to shut up and let you do the talking. First, let's talk about your background. So tell us a little bit about you and your academic background and all that.
So thank you so much for having me. This is my 28th year of teaching. I have been a reading recovery teacher for about 22 years, and I've been a reading specialist now for the past 6 or 7. And I have had an opportunity to really kind of jump right in and write stories. That's really one of my passions. I enjoy sharing those with my students.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a perfect segue into the next thing. And I'm going to stop here for a moment and do my little technology thing. Let's see. I'm going to share. Oh, no, I'm off base here. Before I ask you about your books, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your pre-writing stuff. So I understand that before you wrote the books that we're going to talk about tonight, that you did some other writing. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So several years ago, probably back in 2012, I wrote a series of short open-ended passages for the Words Their Way series. And we used them in the classroom where students could find the words from the sort, and they could also extend the stories. They were sort of story starters. And then from there, I actually developed also some multi-syllabic passages that we're still using. Some of the reading specialists in the county that I work in Maryland are still using. And I've also now in 2019, I started writing some decodable text using my children, my husband, my dogs, and just trying to make some engaging, meaningful text.
Okay, well, that's a perfect segue into the next part. And I'll mention to my readers that what links you could provide for that early writing you will, and you're definitely giving us links for these books we're about to talk about. But in order to do that, I'm going to do a share screen. So talk about these books that you've written, what inspired you, and some of your favorites, and it's all right up here on the screen.
So one of the things that inspired me around the time that I wrote these books, our county was actually switching to a phonics-based approach. And I really wanted to have an opportunity to share some stories with my students that not only had some engaging, meaningful storylines that they might be interested in, but that would also have some nonfiction components. And I also loved from Reading Recovery, the Pioneer Valley series. So I wanted to use a language structure where it was kind of a natural language structure that had dialogue, where you could also work on fluency and really hit all the areas of reading into one text. So I used my dogs, and my children at the time were quite younger. Now they're in college, but I basically developed a storyline for various phonics features, and each story would focus on one feature. And then at the end of most of the stories, there's a little nonfiction component as well. So for instance, Jessica and the pirate costume, that story features the OY feature there. And so Jessica wanted to dress up like a pirate and for Halloween, and Rondo, our dog, also had a pirate costume. She wanted to annoy the boys and get a toy sword. And there's lots of go on a voyage together. So lots of OY words there. And in the back of the story, there's some interesting little pirate facts. Another book that you see there is Painting a Bedroom. That story focuses on the AI. And so throughout that book, there are AY words: complain, strain. My other daughter wanted to paint her bedroom. So my husband helped her so that she wouldn't strain her back. And she was complaining about the smell of the paint, that it might make her faint. Lots of dialogue in that story, and then some tips on how to paint.
And a little bit of rhyme there too, I noticed.
A little bit of rhyme as well. So lots of opportunity to build fluency, reading for expression, all of the wonderful things that Mr. Rosinski talks about so much. And then also with the UR feature, there's Too Much Fur. That was my other dog, Cash. And he received a haircut with some purple clippers that made the sound. And then behind there's Rondo the Pirate. And that story features the AR. So Rondo would run around the yard saying R, pretending like he's a pirate. And in the back of that story, interesting little fact, the nonfiction part is actually my mother's neighbor's dog is a therapy dog. And he's actually been on the America's Funniest Home Videos. He's very popular down in the villages in Florida. So he's featured in that story. But I just wanted to really make some engaging stories that the kids would enjoy reading. And we all know that kids, when they read, they're reading to gain some information or enjoyment. So I wanted to make decodable books that were enjoyable for kids.
Well, I'll give you enjoyable and raise you. Have a real story, have something worth reading, and,
Exactly.
and that's a really important point. And created by a teacher. So how good is that? All right. Well, is there anything more you want to talk about in terms of how to use these books before we get into your final thing, which is talking about you and music? But anything more about these books first?
So this sort of ties into the music component, but during the pandemic, actually I created these books right before the pandemic. And then during the pandemic, my husband and I decided that I wanted to up it a notch and make things a little more exciting while I was teaching virtually. And we decided to create some puppet skits. So I invested in hiring a puppet maker to make puppets to look like the characters in the story. And each of those stories has a skit on my YouTube channel. And I'm a firm believer in music and tying in rap or song to help reinforce skills because it has that natural repetition. Many kids love to sing. And so each skit has either a rap or a song and a little story that goes along with it, with both characters to reinforce that skill. And then it also has some of the words flashing on the screen. This is something that my students enjoy watching, and they can access it at home as well. But what I do is I show the puppet skit. We do a little word work. You can do that with magnetic letters, tiles, blending boards, and then you can tie in the story as well. And then even the kids can have an opportunity, students, to write about the story afterwards using the words with those features.
Well, this is just amazing. And I think we talked before the interview about I'm also a big fan of using music as part of what you do in terms of doing literacy. So before we wrap things up, did I leave anything out? Or is there anything more you want to say about literacy before we wrap things up?
one of the things that I also am doing, and I love that you're trying to find a center ground for both philosophies, because I've really had experience now with both approaches. And I do believe there's a lot of center ground, but I think a very important component that all teachers can use is integrating music. So I integrate music as well to teach the sight words. I will have a song for each sight word that I introduce, and I've found tremendous success with students being able to remember how to write the sight words. So we have some motions that we use when appropriate. I'll tie in like over, over, and I'll have the students use their hands. Pardon my voice, I'm getting over a cold here. But we'll tie in with bingo. My kids will always sing THE spells the, and I'll have them write it while they're singing it. It's just really an engaging way to teach sight words versus just flashcards. So anytime I can integrate music or movement, any kind of tactile activities, it really seems to kind of solidify and help reinforce those skills so that the students remember them.
Wow. So, well, you'll have to talk to Eric Lippman sometime. He is totally into the movements and all that kind of thing. So, my gosh. Well, this has just been informative, entertaining, and besides that, by gosh, by golly, here's a teachers who is going the extra mile and creating stuff that there'll be links to the stuff that you, I think most, although they'll have to buy the books, but other things like your YouTube channel sound like they can just click on that.
That's free.
And yeah, that's teacher's favorite word. Did you know that?
The free,
I'm building
absolutely.
free. Yeah, that's a favorite word for the
That
building.
is a favorite word.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we're ready to wrap things up. And there's one last thing we always do in a Bomberito interview, and it's just become a tradition. And so get ready with the hand there to do the Zoom wave goodbye. And thank you so much. And
Thank you so much.
okay, and looking forward, I know I'm going to be using some of that. I'm going to be using some of your stuff. I guarantee it. Probably by